The Bible predicted in Revelation 13 what's happening in the world right now. BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, is an acronym for the 5 leading emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And all these nations just came together and formed an agreement saying we should create a new currency. Right now in the infant stages, it looks like, oh, other nations have done that. This has happened before, things that people always say in the past. But this is a clear setup for what's referenced in Revelation 13, 16 through 18, saying that all people, great, small, rich and poor, free and slave, will have to have a mark in their hand or in their head to buy and sell, showing that there will be a world-controlled currency. And that's exactly what these 5 BRICS nations just came out and said. They want to drop the dollar and create their own new currency.
That are also facing economic collapse, and it's all going to happen together.
Here's some news you might have missed. The president of Sri Lanka flees after protesters storm the capital. The prime minister of Italy has resigned from office. Ecuador is facing economic collapse. Argentina is facing economic collapse. There have been protests all over the Netherlands by Dutch farmers because of their government's manufactured nitrogen crisis. Boris Johnson resigned from office when Bill Gates was in the country. The prime minister of Pakistan was removed from office when Bill Gates was in the country. Panama is facing economic collapse. And now in South Africa, there are protests because of their economic collapse, and people have died from it. If you don't think the Great Reset is happening, here's your proof. It's happening right in front of us and coming to America soon.
IC admits that they will send out an announcement. So get ready for this. They admit they will send out an announcement and they will tell us not to use money. This is how that's going to go down. They tell us that they plan on telling us on a Friday night. See if you can guess why they would tell us on a Friday night that the banking system has collapsed.
There are a lot of things we've been thinking about, and what we want to hear from you today is what you think the priorities would be in order to go about setting expectations appropriately in public about how we would execute Title II. So that if and when we do have to have that announcement on Friday night, ideally Friday night, that people are in a position to receive it, understand it, and say, yeah, that works. And we can see how this will happen. Of course, there will be doubters, but there's a lot of things going on.
So Friday night, of course, the banking system is closed. So people all weekend can just be at home freaking out because, oh, wait a minute, what's going to happen with my money?
Yeah.
My bank's going, like, we're in this economic system. What the hell are you going to do about my money? It's gone. They're admitting, like, this is coming.
And it's not going to be just us here in the United States. Like I said earlier, we now have a world economy. We're all tied together.
Is a recession. What your crazy friends might say to you is coming is maybe a depression. You'd be mistaken. Those are lies. What is coming is a collapse of the dollar. You haven't had one of those. We've never experienced the collapse of the dollar, of the world's reserve currency. This will make us Venezuela. Make no mistake. If you want to be prepared, prepare yourself like people should have prepared in Venezuela. Soon, I don't know when, but it will happen overnight. Soon, everything will be collapsing, and the banks will close, and there will be chaos.
Well, that's just Glenn Beck. He's a conspiracy theorist. What does he know, right? Well, let's see what the president of Kenya has to say about this.
For the people who work numbers, I am giving you free advice that those of you who are holding dollars, you surely might go into losses. You better do what you must do, because this market is going to be different in a couple of weeks.
Is their tool for doing all of this? Basically, it's control of your money, because if they can control what you're allowed to spend and what you're not allowed to spend, then they have absolute total control over you. And as she said, every nation in the world has now committed to this, to the SDGs. And part of what she said is that in order to commit, a country must commit to moving away from cash to some sort of digital option. They want to have total control so that they can achieve their goals by 2030. So the first major step in achieving their goals is to institute the digital currency worldwide.
Governments worldwide are trying to replace cash with CBDC surveillance tokens, and people worldwide are starting to wake up. In fact, a recent poll found that Americans overwhelmingly reject a CBDC, and opposition rises as they learn more about it. So why do governments keep pushing CBDCs when voters hate them? Simple, CBDCs are irresistible to governments who would dearly love to monitor and control every dollar you spend. Think of the opportunities for social engineering, reparations, or a China-style social credit system. Meanwhile, punishing political opponents with a CBDC means controlling speech, which means permanent job security for politicians who serve the deep state first with the people as an afterthought. So how can we fight CBDCs? The easiest is to make sure your government doesn't start one. Central banks worldwide, 8 at last count, starting with China, are running CBDC pilot projects, allegedly for research, that build fully functional CBDCs without authorization. The people control the government, not the other way around, and we tell them what they're allowed to pilot via our elected representatives. It is up to us to make our representatives stop them before we are locked in a digital cage that none of us voted for.
Now, a digital currency like this will allow the government to track every single penny that you spend. They'll know exactly where you're spending it, and they have the ability to deny you the ability to spend if they want to. Now, at first glance, that looks like there are some good things about that, and there are. Like, for instance, the drug trade and the arms trade, they deal exclusively in cash, millions of dollars in cash. Cash won't be an option anymore, and the government can track that, and so that looks like it's a good thing. But do you trust your government to know what's best for you? Do you trust your government to stay hands off? If you start doing anything that is against their goals, no matter what they are, they can just simply deny you the ability to spend money. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what else to say.
Not too long ago, 2 friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down.
We are living in a peri-tyrannical situation where there's only 2 clicks left when you are required to have digital ID to move around and have a life, and when cashless central bank digital currencies are the only way you can buy and sell. At that point, you've lost your freedom. If you follow the breadcrumbs to 2030, anyone can look up the UN 2030 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. By 2030, Britain specifically will have no commercial passenger aircraft leaving the country. You will not be able to leave. There will be no ships leaving the country. You will not own private transport. You will have a digital ID to do everything, and you will only have electronic money with which to transact. I would say at that point you are a slave, and because you can see them coming, you should say no. Say no right now. Stop. The things that are happening are really fantastic, but they go back decades. There's no question that there's been a very long run-up to the level of control that we are going to face if we allow cash to be winked out of existence.
So how will this CBDC be introduced in the United States? Well, right now we have a number of programs like PayPal, Cash App, other things like that make it easy to transfer money from one person to another. The Federal Reserve will be introducing their own PayPal-type program called FedNow, which will allow people to transfer money. Because if you don't have a cash system, how are you going to pay somebody to mow your lawn when you usually just give them the cash, or something like that? How are you just going to give some money to a friend if you can't use cash? Well, the Federal Reserve's answer to that is FedNow. It'll allow you to easily transfer money back and forth. Now, there are a lot of you who are probably going to be thinking, well, this is the mark of the beast. It's not yet. It's a run-up to the mark of the beast, and I'll talk about that later in this video. But FedNow is the vehicle that the United States and the Federal Reserve will be using to bring about the CBDC digital currency cashless society.
The Federal Reserve has announced that its FedNow instant 24/7 payment network will be fully launched in July. And here in the United States, President Joe Biden, in March of 2022, issued Executive Order 14067, which facilitates the development of digital assets, including CBDCs. A CBDC is issued and regulated by a nation's monetary authority or central bank, obliterating financial privacy and anonymity. In November of 2022, the New York Federal Reserve launched Project Cedar for cross-border payments.
In fact, money is created and invented and put into circulation. That puts the money into the system. Because you see, Federal Reserve notes, paper money is only 3% of the money supply, something like that. Almost all the money we're using was originally created by banks through lending. So over 90% is bank digital currency.
Did you know that in July of this year, the Federal Reserve is introducing its own instant payment system called FedNow? And FedNow is going to allow people and businesses to be able to send and receive instant payments through participating financial institutions, such as JP Morgan Chase and American Savings. It's going to be run like a Cash App and a PayPal, except it's supposed to be safer. Of course it is. Now, you might have seen there's a lot of speculation around FedNow, as many people believe it is a CBDC, which is a central bank digital currency, but it's not. It's not a central bank digital currency because it's not actually being backed by the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank in the United States. It's being created by the Federal Reserve, but it's being backed by commercial banks, like I just said, JP Morgan Chase, American Savings. But with all that said, I still feel like it is laying the groundwork for a CBDC to be introduced. And I also feel like it's giving the feds an easier way to monitor and control our money. So FedNow is a FedNo for me. Who even thought of the name? Like, it's a horrible name.
So FedNow is scheduled to be officially launched in July of 2023. Now, this is, as was reported earlier, this is not actually a CBDC. It's an introductory transitional program that will help to bring CBDC into reality. And, I have heard a number of people say, just don't use it. Just continue to use cash. Well, that's completely naive, because there's going to be a transition period where you can use cash or CBDCs. But here's what's going to happen eventually. There will be a deadline where cash will no longer be legal tender. All of a sudden, your $100 bill will be completely worthless. No bank will take it. No store will take it. Nothing. And you'll have a deadline of when you can put that money into your bank so that it'll be transferred into the CBDC system. And if you don't, then the money is just, you might as well use it to start your fire, because it's going to be completely worthless. Now, what is the end result of when the CBDC is fully in place?
It's programmable, meaning it is programmable for the individual. So in other words, if the government decides that they're going to, we need to cut down on fatties, then my digital coin will not allow me to buy fatty foods. I wouldn't be able to go to McDonald's. I'm using this as an example. There is not, anything in the works to do this, except this is what programmable means. They can program it so if they say, you know what, nobody's going to work, you're not an essential employee, your coin will not buy gas. So you can go to try to fill up, but when you put your digital card in from the Fed, it will say denied, and you won't have any way other than that card to be able to buy what you need. It is absolute control of your life.
Now, that programmable aspect of the CBDCs, I'm sure, is not going to be coming into effect immediately. It's going to take a transition period just to get us completely onto the CBDC system. But then as that happens, then they will be able to roll out these programmable issues at any time to control our spending.
Your access to your own money, so you will not be able to buy or sell anything. This is what I mean about how dangerous it is.
You're shut out of the economy.
You are shut out of the economy, and of course, it's all subjective, and it will all be in the hands of these Marxists, right? And so you and I won't be able to buy anything. This is why it's so dangerous, because this spells the end of your economic freedom.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure the American people are really paying close attention to it. I'm glad Senator Cruz and some others, Governor DeSantis, they're paying attention to it. But this is moving very fast down the track. And we need more leaders on the Republican side to stand up, and even responsible Democrats to say, look, this is not the path for the United States. Because if we continue to go down the path, you're going to lose all of your economic freedom, and economic power will be centralized in the hands of the very, very few.
And I think there's a lot of conversation about a tax on freedom, a tax on democracy, right? And you look at all those things. Do you think this is one of the greatest threats that we face in the country, is the digitization of the dollar by the Fed?
Yes, 100%. And it's moving along a parallel track with the de-dollarization movement, where you have countries now that are dumping the dollar. It's moving pretty fast. All Saudi Arabia has to do is say, you know what, we're going to start trading oil in different currencies rather than the dollar, to have a complete global and certainly American economic collapse.
Some of the wording of that last clip just absolutely floored me, because she didn't even know it, but she was specifically quoting scripture.
Your access to your own money, so you will not be able to buy or sell anything.
Revelation 13:17, so that they could not buy or sell anything unless they had the mark. Now, I've said it several times already in this video, and I'll say it several times again. The digital currency is not the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is still to come. Once the digital currency system is in place, then the mark of the beast will be a new system to access your digital currency. But rest assured, or believe me, even though this is not happening yet, it's in the development stages to develop the chips that will be put in your hand or your forehead that will allow you to access your accounts with your digital currency.
So if you're wondering which chapter in the book of Revelation we're living out today, I would direct your attention to Revelation 13, where it talks about the mark of the beast. Yeah, the Biden administration is rolling out a funding program called Chips for America. Which Chips for America, you may ask? Well, while we were all distracted this past summer, our Congress passed a bill called the Chips and Science Act, which includes major funding and research for semiconductor microchips. And yeah, that includes biotechnology. Yeah, that's happening. So Biden and Harris announced $39 billion in incentives for these companies to produce chips for everything, including your brain and your hands, just like Jeff Bezos, Musk, and Gates are all working on projects to implant chips in people's brains. So yeah, the hour's getting late, folks. Don't get chips in your hands. Don't get them in your head. Don't get them anywhere.
And not only are micro biochips being developed, but we are also already being groomed to accept them, starting with our kids. Take a look at this clip from a kids' cartoon on Netflix.
Carter City is stunned by the sudden rollout of Rook Unlimited's most fantastic device ever. The Smart Mark. Throw your other devices away, because the Smart Mark is more than just a phone. It's part of you. Use it as cash. Book your travel. And even shoot video. Distribution points are all over the city. And don't let the lines discourage you. The Rook Unlimited Smart Mark is worth the wait. I never realized how wonderful technology could make me feel. The Smart Mark has brought order to my life. And the best part? It's absolutely free. A gift of thanks to our city from Rook Unlimited.
23% of the population has been given the Smart Mark, number 1.
Time to test our system, number 6. The Flex Fighters are out there somewhere. Teaming up with Jonathan Rook. Let's put our new recruits to work. Subtly.